Do you mean you are glad I was disgraced before the whole school? Cried Amy. I should not have chosen that way of mending a fault, replied her mother, but I'm not sure that it won't do you more good than a milder method. Mm. You are getting to be rather conceited, 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 my dear, and it is quite time you set about correcting it. You have a good many little gifts and virtues. All right, this one. But there is no need of parenting, priding, parading, prating, don't know, parodying them. For conceit spoils the finest genius. Genius. There's not much danger that real talent or goodness will be overlooked long, even if it is the consciousness of possessing, I don't know, possessing and using it well should satisfy one. And the great charm of all power is modesty. So it, so it, so it is, cried Laurie, who was playing chess in a corner with Joe. I knew a girl once who had a really remarkable talent for music, and she didn't know it. Never guessed what sweet little things she composed when she was alone, and wouldn't have believed it if anyone had told her. I wish I'd known that nice girl. Maybe she would have helped me. I'm so stupid, said Beth, who stood beside him, listening eagerly. You do know her, and she helps you better than anyone else could, answered Laurie, looking at her with such mischievous meaning in his merry black eyes, but that Beth suddenly turned very red, and had hid her face in the sofa cushion, quite overcome by such an unexpected discovery. Joe let Laurie when the game to pay for the praise of her Beth, who could not be prevailed upon to play for them after her compliment. All right, this one. So Laurie did his best and sang delightfully, being in a particularly lively humour. For, for, to, for to the marches, he seldom showed the moody side of his character when he was gone. Amy, who had been pensive all the evening, said suddenly, as if busy over some new idea, "Is Laurie an accomplished boy?" "Yes, he has had an excellent education and has much talent. He will make a fine man if not spoiled by pitting." "Hmm," replied her mother. "And he isn't conceited, is he?" asked Amy. "Not in the least. That is why he is so charming, and we all like him so much." "I see. It is nice to have accomplishments and be elegant, but not to show off or get packed up," said Amy thoughtfully. "These things are always seen and felt in a person's manner and conversation, if modestly used, but it is not necessary to display them," said Mrs. March, "any more than it is proper to wear all your bonnets and gowns and ribbons at once, that folks may know you've got them," added Joe, and the lecture ended in a laugh. Chapter 8. Joe meets Apollyon. Apollyon. Who's Apollyon? "Girls, where are you going?" asked Amy, coming into their room one Saturday afternoon and finding them getting ready to go out with an air of secrecy, which excited her curiosity. Let me highlight this one. "Never mind, little girls shouldn't ask questions," returned Joe sharply. No. Now, if there is anything mortifying to our feelings when we are young, it is to be told that, and to be bidden to run away, dear, is still more trying to us. Amy bridled up at this insult and determined to find out the secret if she teased for an hour. Turning to Meg, who never refused her anything very long, she said coaxingly, "Do tell me. I should think you might let me go too, for Beth is fussing over her piano and I haven't got anything to do, and I'm so lonely." "I can't, dear, because you aren't invited," began Meg, but Joe broke in impatiently. "Now, Meg, be quiet or you will spoil it all. You can't go, Amy, so don't be a baby and whine about it. You are going somewhere with Laurie. I know you are. You were whispering and laughing together on the sofa last night, and you stopped when I came in. Aren't you going with him?" "Yes, we are. Now do be still and stop bothering." Amy held her tongue but used her eyes and saw Meg slip a fan into her bucket. I know. You're going to the hall to see the 7 castles," she cried, adding resolutely, "and I shall go, for mother said I might see it, and I've got my rag money, and it was mean not to tell me in time." "Just listen to me a minute and be a good child," said Meg soothingly. "Mother doesn't wish you to go this week because your eyes are not well enough yet to bear the light of this fairy bees. Next week you can go with Beth and Hannah and have a nice time. I don't like that half as well as going with you and Laurie. Please let me. I've been sick with this cold so long and shut up. I'm dying for some fun." "Do, Meg. I'll be ever so good," pleaded Amy, looking as pathetic as she could. "Suppose we take her? I don't believe mother would mind if we bundle her up well," began Meg. Where am I? Bundled. Where am I? I can't figure. I can't find it. Okay. "Suppose we take her. I don't believe mother would mind if we bundle her up well," began Meg. "If she goes, I shan't, and if I don't, Laurie won't like it, and it will be very rude after he invited only us to go and drag in Amy. I should think she'd hate to poke herself where she isn't wanted," said Joe crossly, for she disliked the trouble of being a fidgety child when she wanted to enjoy herself. Her tone and manner angered Amy, who began to put her boots on, saying in her most aggravating way, "I shall go. Meg says I may, and if I pay for myself, Laurie hasn't anything to do with it. You can't sit with us, for our seats are reserved, and you mustn't sit alone, so Laurie will give you his place, and that will spoil our pleasure, or he'll get another seat for you, and that isn't proper. When you weren't asked, you shan't stir a step, so you may just stay where you are," scolded Joe, crosser than ever, having just pricked her finger in her hurry. Sitting on the floor with one boot on, Amy began to cry, and Meg to reason with her, when Laurie called from below, and the 2 girls hurried down, leaving their sister wailing, for now and then she forgot her grown-up ways and acted like a spoiled child. Just as the party were setting out, Amy called over the banisters in a threatening voice. "You'll be sorry for this so much. See if you ain't." "Fiddlesticks," returned Joe, slamming the door. They had a charming time, for the 7 castles of the Diamond Lake was as brilliant and wonderful as a heart could wish. But in spite of the comical red imps, sparkling elves, and gorgeous princes and princesses, Joe's pleasure had a drop of bitterness in it. The fair queen's yellow curls reminded her of Amy. And between the acts, she amused herself with wondering what her sister would do to make her sorry for it. Where am I? She and Amy had many lively skirmishes in the course of their lives, for both had quick tempers and were apt to be violent when fairly roused. Amy teased Joe. Joe irritated Amy, and semi-occasional explosions occurred, of which both were much ashamed afterward, although the oldest, Joe, had the least self-control and had hard times trying to curb the fiery spirit which has continually getting her into trouble. Her anger never lasted long, and having humbly confessed her fault, she sincerely repented and tried to do better. Her sisters used to say that they rather liked to get Joe into a fury because she was such an angel afterward. Poor Joe tried desperately to be good, but her bosom enemy was always ready to flame up and defeat her, and it took years of patient effort to subdue it. This word. When they got home, they found Amy reading in the parlor. This word again. She assumed an injured air as they came in, never lifted her eyes from her book, or asked a single question. Perhaps curiosity might have conquered resentment if Beth had not been there to inquire, and receive a glowing description of the play on going up to put away her best hat. Okay. Joe's first look was toward the bureau, for in their last quarrel, Amy had soothed her feelings by turning Joe's top drawer upside down on the floor. Everything was in its place, however, and after a hasty glance into her various closets, bags, and boxes, Joe decided that Amy had forgiven and forgotten her wrongs. Though Joe was mistaken, for next day she made a discovery which produced a tempest. Meg, Beth, and Amy were sitting together late in the afternoon when Joe burst into the room, looking excited and demanding breathlessly, "Has anyone taken my book?" Meg and Beth said no at once and looked surprised. Amy poked the fire and said nothing. Joe saw her color rise and was down upon her in a minute. "Amy, you've got it." "No, I haven't." "You know what it is, then." "No, I don't." "That's a fib," cried Joe, taking her by the shoulders and looking fierce enough to frighten a much braver child than Amy. "It isn't. I haven't got it." "Don't know. where it is now and don't care. You know something about it, and you better tell at once or I'll make you. And Joe gave her a slight shake. Scold as much as you like. You'll never see your silly old book again, cried Amy, getting excited in her turn. Why not? I burned it up. What? My little book I was so fond of and worked over and meant to finish before father got home. Have you really burned it? Said Joe, turning very pale while her eyes kindled and her hands clutched Amy nervously. Yes, I did. I told you I'd make you pay for being so cross yesterday, and I have so. Amy got no further, for Joe's hot temper mastered her, and she shook Amy till her teeth chattered in her head, crying in a passion of grief and anger. You wicked girl! I never can write it again, and I'll never forgive you as long as I live. Meg flew to rescue Amy and Beth to pacify Joe, but Joe was quite beside herself, and with a parting box on her sister's ear, she rushed out of the room up to the old sofa in the garret, and and finished her fight alone. The storm cleared up below, for Mrs. March came home, and having heard the story, soon brought Amy to a sense of the wrong she had done her sister. Joe's book was the pride of her heart, and was regarded by her family as a literary sprout of great promise. It was only half a dozen little fairy tales, but Joe had worked over them patiently, putting her whole heart into her work, hoping to make something good enough to print. She had just copied them with great care, and had destroyed the old manuscript, so that Amy's bonfire had consumed the loving work of several years. It seemed a small loss to others, but to Joe it was a dreadful calamity, and she felt that it never could be made up to her. Beth mourned as for a departed kitten, and Meg refused to defend her bet. Mrs. March looked grave and grieved, and Amy felt that no one would have loved her till she had asked pardon for the act which she now regretted more than any of them. Okay, this one is a bit... Okay. When the tea bell rang, Joe appeared looking so grim and unapproachable that it took all Amy's courage to say meekly, Please forgive me, Joe. I'm very, very sorry. I never shall forgive you, was Joe's stern answer, and from that moment she ignored Amy entirely. No one spoke of the great trouble, not even Mrs. March, for all had learned by experience that when Joe was in that mood words were wasted, and the wisest course was to wait till some little accident or her own generous nature softened Joe's resentment and healed the breach. It was not a happy evening, for though they sewed as usual, while their mother read aloud from Bremer, Scott, or Edgeworth. Something was wanting, and the sweet home peace was disturbed. Okay, they felt this most when signing time came. I think it's sinning time. Sinning time came, for Beth could only pay. Joe stood dumb as a stone, and Amy broke down. So Meg and Mother sang along, but in spite of their efforts to be as cheery as larks, the flute-like voices did not seem to chord as well as usual, and all felt out of tune. okay. As Jo received her good-night kiss, Mrs. March whispered gently, "My dear, don't let the sun go down upon your anger. Forgive each other, help each other, and begin again tomorrow." Jo wanted to lay her head down on that motherly bosom and cry her grief and anger all away, but tears were an unmanly weakness, and she felt so deeply injured that she really couldn't quite forgive yet. So she winked hard, shook her head, and said gruffly, because Amy was listening, "It was an abominable, wow, what is this word? Abominable forgiven." With that, she marched off to bed, and there was no merry or confidential gossip that night. Amy was much offended that her overtures of peace had been repulsed. Let me highlight this one. And began to wish she had not humbled herself to feel more injured than ever, and to blame herself on her superior virtue in a way which was particularly exasperating. So Jo still looked like a thunder cloud, and nothing went well all day. It was bitter cold in the morning. She dropped her precious turnover in the gutter, and Aunt March had an attack of fidgets. Meg was pensive, but would look grieved and wistful when she got home, and Amy kept making remarks about people who were always talking about being good and yet wouldn't try when other people set them a virtuous example. This one, I think. Okay, everybody is so hateful. I'll ask Laurie to go skating. He's always kind and jolly and will put me to rights. I know, said Jo to herself, and off she went. Amy heard the clash of skates and looked out with an impatient exclamation. There, she promised I should go next time, for this is the last ice we shall have. But it's no use to ask such a cross patch to take me. Don't say that. You were very naughty, and it is hard to forgive the loss of her precious little book. But I think she might do it now, and I guess she will. If you try her at the right minute, said Meg. Go after them. Don't say anything till Jo has got good-natured with Laurie. Then take a quiet minute and just kiss her, or do some kind thing, and I'm sure she'll be friends again with all her heart. I'll try, said Amy, for the advice suited her, and after a flurry to get ready, she ran after the friends who were just disappearing over the hill. It was not far to river, but both were ready before Amy reached them. Jo saw her coming and turned her back. Laurie did not see, for he was carefully skating along the shore, sounding the ice, for a warm spell had preceded the cold snap. I'll go in the first bend and see if it is all right before we begin to race, Amy heard him say as he shot away, looking like a young Russian in his fur-trimmed coat and cap. Jo heard Amy panting after her run, stamping her feet and blowing on her fingers as she tried to put her skates on, but Jo never turned and went slowly, zigzagging down the river, taking a bitter and happy sort of satisfaction in her sister's troubles. She had cherished her anger till it growed strong and took possession of her, as evil thoughts and feelings always do, unless cast out at once. As Laurie turned the bend, he shouted back, "Keep near the shore. It isn't safe in the middle." All right. Joe heard, but Amy was struggling to her feet and did not catch a word. Joe glanced over her shoulder, and the little demon she was harboring said in her ear, "No matter whether she had or not, let her take care of herself." Laurie had vanished around the bend. Joe was just as at the turn, and Amy far behind, striking out toward the smoother ice in the middle of the river. For a minute, Joe stood still, with a strange feeling at her heart. Then she resolved to go on, but something held and turned her around just in time to see Amy throw up her hands and go down with a sudden crash of rotten ice, the splash of water, and a cry that made Joe's heart stand still with fear. She tried to call Laurie, but her voice was gone. She tried to rush forward, but her feet seemed to have no strength in them, and for a second she could only stand motionless, staring with a striking face at the little blue head above the black water. Something brushed softly by her, and Laurie's voice cried out, "Bring a rail, quick, quick." How she did it, she never knew, but for the next few minutes she worked as if possessed, blindly obeying Laurie, who was quite self-possessed and lying flat, held Amy up by his arm and hookey till Joe dragged a rail from the fence, and together they got the child out, more frightened than hurt. "Now, then, we must walk her home as fast as we can. Pile our things on her while I get off these confounded skates," cried Laurie, wrapping his coat around Amy and tugging away at the straps, which never seemed so intricate before. Shivering, dripping, and crying, they got Amy home, and after an exciting time of it, she fell asleep, rolled in blankets before a hot fire. During the bustle, Joe had scarcely spoken, but flown about, looking pale and wild, with her things half off, her dress torn, and her hands cut and bruised by ice and rails and refractory buckles. When Amy was comfortably, the house quiet, and Mrs. March sitting by the bed, she called Joe to her and began to bind up the hurt hands. "Are you sure? Are you sure she is safe?" whispered Joe, looking remorsefully at the golden head, which might have been swept away from her sight forever under the treacherous ice. "Okay, quite safe, dear. She and won't even take cold, I think. You were so sensible in covering and getting her home quickly," replied her mother cheerfully. "Laurie did it all. I only let her go. Mother, if she should die, it would be my fault." And Joe dropped down beside the bed in a passion of penitent tears, telling all that had happened, bitterly condemning her hardness of heart, and sobbing out her gratitude for being spared the heavy punishment which might have come upon her. This one. I'm gonna have a sip of my tea. It is my dreadful temper. I try to cure it. I think I have. And then it breaks out worse than ever. Oh, mother, what shall I do? What shall I do? Cried poor Joe in despair. Watch and pray, dear. Never get tired of trying, and never think it is impossible to conquer your fault, said Mrs. March, drawing the blousy head to her shoulder, and kissing the wet cheek so tenderly that Joe cried harder than ever. You don't know, and you can't guess how bad it is. It seems as if I could do anything when I'm in a passion. I get so savage. I could hurt anyone and enjoy it. I'm afraid I shall do something dreadful some day and spoil my life and make everybody hate me. Oh, mother, help me. Do help me. I will, my child, I will. Don't cry so bitterly, but remember this day, and resolve with all your soul that you will never know another like it. Joe dear, we all have our temptation, some far greater than yours, and it often takes us all our lives to conquer them. You think your temper is the worst in the world, but mine used to be just like it. Yours, mother? Why, you are never angry. And for the moment Joe forgot remorse and surprise. I've been trying to cure it for 40 years and have only succeeded in controlling it. I am angry nearly every day of my life, Joe, but I have learned not to show it, and I still hope to learn not to feel it, though it may take me another 40 years to do so. The patience and the humility of the face she loved so well was a better lesson to show than the wisest lecture. The sharpest reproof. She felt comforted at once by the sympathy and confidence given her the knowledge that her mother had a fault like hers, and tried to mend it, made her own easier to bear, and strengthened her resolution to cure it, though 40 years seemed rather a long time to watch and pray to a girl of 15. Mother, are you angry when you fold your lips tight together and go out of the room sometimes when Aunt March scolds, or people worry you? Asked Joe, feeling nearer and dearer to her mother than ever before. Yes, I've learned to check the hasty words that rise to my lips, and when I feel that they mean to break out against my will, I just go away a minute and give myself a little shake for being so weak and wicked, answered Mrs. March with a sigh and a smile, as she smoothed and fastened up Joe's dishevelled hair. How did you learn to keep still? That is what troubles me, for the sharp words fly out before I know what I'm about, and the more I say, the worse I get, till it is a pleasure to hurt people's feelings and say dreadful things. Tell me how you do it, mommy dear. My good mother used to help me, as you do us, interrupted Joe with a grateful kiss.